Hello again, Chris Lee and Chase Robinson of Southeastern 16 here to talk about Alabama's big game with LSU this weekend. And when we go to do that, we talk to our good buddy Drew DeArmond, who is all over the airwaves in Huntsville, Alabama. Drew, thanks for joining us today.
It's great to be with you, Chris and Chase. It's a big week. We just had monumental election wrap up last night, and yet the first thing we talked about on our show this morning was on Talking Ball was the college football playoff rankings, which I'm still a little perplexed as why, because I mean you can look at the calendar, why they decided to do it in the middle of that. I don't know why they didn't wait another week or do it tonight. I don't know, but it was interesting that the playoff rankings came out. Alabama was 11th. I thought they had a good shot to be in the top 12, which sets it up for, they can control what they can control. In other words, I think if they win, they're in. Again, this game coming up is basically an elimination game from the college football playoff race on Saturday night in Red Stick. And Alabama historically has a great record in Baton Rouge, and under Nick Saban, they were 6-2 and lost a close game in 2010. During the Les Miles era, after they were the defending national champs after the 2009 run, and then they lost in 22, his last trip to Baton Rouge. We know the Mason Taylor 2-point conversion, but other than that, a lot of them were classics. And I'll be honest with you, when you look at it and compare and contrast, and if you just do the raw numbers, or even just think about both teams going into the matchup, I think it's going to be another classic. I think it's going to be another four-quarter game. I don't expect Alabama to blow out LSU or vice versa. LSU is a very talented offensive team, and Alabama is still kind of finding themselves under Kalen DeBoer. But if you followed Alabama this year, sans the Wisconsin game in Western Kentucky, pretty much every game has been a four-quarter fight, even to a certain degree South Florida. So you might as well buckle up. It's going to be a back and forth contest, and Alabama's going to have to play, I think, their most complete game of the year, gentlemen, because LSU last year was a one-dimensional team. They had, I thought, the best player in college football in Jaden Daniels, but they had a horrendous defense. Not bad, probably the worst they've ever had in school history. It's much improved this year, but yet when you look at the metrics and the statistics, it's in the bottom third of the league in both rushing and pass defense. So I think that allows Alabama a good shot to win. But at the same time, this ain't Nick Saban's defense. Alabama's going through a transition. Their defensive numbers aren't, where we have been used to seeing them. So it's going to be a very, very interesting matchup, no question.
Well, Drew, first of all, I thought 11 is exactly where I've had Alabama. I did my homework, compared resumes. So I think anybody that says they're undeserving, that's exactly where I would have. In fact, I had pegged all 12 of the playoff teams that the committee pegged. So I think that gives us a little bit of insight into how it went. But I want to ask you about the defense. You just mentioned it. And I watched him at times and I go, boy, it's nowhere near what Saban had. And I get that Brady Cook wasn't well, didn't play part of the game, but you pitch a shutout against anybody, anytime in this league, and you've done something. What did we learn? How did opinions change on Alabama's defense with what it did against Missouri a couple of weeks ago?
Well, I mean, I thought they only had one sack early. That was Jihad Campbell, but I thought they affected the quarterback. Brady Cook didn't come in near 100%. I was actually mildly surprised he played. As you remember, it was reported he was doubtful. I thought he would probably miss the game and Drew Pine would play the majority of the snaps. But he gutted it out for a quarter and a half, then got injured again. His hand hit a helmet or whatnot. They decided to take him out for the last 2.5 quarters. Pine turned it over 3 times. But I thought Alabama, even when Brady was in there, I thought they did a good job of rushing, affecting the QB, moving him, making him uncomfortable. And that's the key. It's not necessarily always sacks, but you've got to move the quarterback. You've got to make him throw on the run, throw off balance, hurry throws. I thought they did that. And now with this week off that they've had, LSU's had the same, but hopefully they'll be a little healthier in the secondary because they're young and they're banged up. So now they're not going to have Keon Sabb, the Michigan transfer. He gutted it out in the loss in Knoxville and played 3 quarters on a broken foot. And so it's probably he might come back for the playoffs, but he could be out for the year. I mean, they just sit out for a while. Kalen DeBoer's he's the upper body, lower body injury kind of guy. He doesn't really give you a lot of meat on that, just like he finally did say this week. And it looked like against South Carolina that was the case. But punt returner and slot receiver Cole Adams is now out for the season after recovering from an elbow injury earlier in the year. This time it's lower body, which we think is knee. So he's out for the year. So and that hurts Alabama somewhat, though they've had 3 different punt returners. True freshman Jalen Mbakwe and Ryan Williams have both also been back there with the red shirt freshman Adams. So, but I think the defense took some steps forward. I think the pass rush was better. I thought Bray Hubbard stepped in for Keon Sabb, 7 tackles, an interception. He played exceptional. And now they've got a chance to get guys like Devontae Smith and freshman Red Morgan back that can play that nickel spot, and they'll have more bodies. The key for this defense, though, is they have to create turnovers. That's why they didn't beat Vanderbilt. Like, I know they created some turnovers and still lost to Tennessee, but Tennessee's got a top 3 defense in the SEC. Alabama did not take advantage of opportunities. They had a very poor offensive game. Tennessee had something to do with that, but also Jalen Milroe and not pulling the trigger had something to do with that as well. So, but again, I think overall, when you look at it, Alabama, that's going to be the key. They've got to do a better job of run defense, which was better against Missouri, but let's not misunderstand. Noel, their leading rusher, did not play. And so Alabama's going to have to contain. I don't ever think this Alabama team is going to suffocate anyone with their run defense, but they've got to contain the LSU running game. And LSU's dead last in the SEC in rushing the football. And they've got to continue that trend. They've got to make LSU one-dimensional, and they've got to create some turnovers defensively.
Chase, before you get the next one, reminder, BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action, the ability to watch the games as they happen with the world's largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, NHL to entertainment and political props. Head to BetOnline today to get in on all the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here.
Yeah, when it comes to offense, Drew, I mean, you look at the run game for Alabama. They're 6th in the SEC, 177.6 rushing yards per game, 28 rushing touchdowns, which is 3rd best in the country. When it comes to Alabama running the football, do you think that's something they can be successful at versus LSU? And how important will the run game be when you look at kind of this final stretch for Alabama?
Very important. The tailback involvement, so to speak, has been a hot topic of conversation because going into the season, I think everyone had high expectations for Jam Miller and certainly Justice Haynes. And while they were productive and you look from a yards per carry standpoint, they didn't have as many attempts as people would like. Certainly Milroe has kind of dominated, had more carries, yards, and touchdowns than both of them for the majority of the season. Now, Jam has finally got going, and Justice had a really good game against Mizzou. They need that to continue, and really they need to help Jalen Milroe out and take some of the pressure off of him. I do like a lot of the called QB runs early in the year, but we all know when film gets out there that people start adjusting, and Kirby Smart kind of showed everybody the blueprint in the second half of the Georgia-Alabama game when he started taking Milroe away. And so to counterpoint, I think you gotta attack a little bit a different way. You've got to get the tailbacks involved. You've got to, in my opinion, run outside the tackles. I like what they've done since then, where they've started to get Kendrick Law involved, because you got to find different ways to run the football. But here's the maddening part, guys. It's going to sound funny, but it's the absolute truth. Jalen Milroe, as great an athlete as he is, and he's one of the top 2 or 3 on Alabama's team, one of the top 2 to 3 fastest guys. He doesn't like to run the football. He's not a willing runner at times. I mean, certainly he's going to, when they call his number, on called QB runs, he's going to do that. But where he's not done, what he's coached to do, in my opinion, is he needs to be basically a 2-read guy, 1, 2, and if they're not there, you need to take off. And if you watch the tape, and I'm talking about even against Vandy, against Tennessee, he has missed some opportunities for big plays with his legs by just hanging in the pocket too long, taking a sack, or a prime example, and I know Chris was there, he'll remember it in the Vandy game, he had 30 yards of real estate to gain a first down, and he throws the ball over the line of scrimmage. It's complete.
Yeah.
It's a penalty that gets called back, and it forces an Alabama punt. He had the same opportunity against Tennessee and ended up, throwing the ball 10 yards out of bounds over Ryan Williams' head. He has got to be a willing runner. Last year against LSU, I was at that game at Bryant-Denny, and I thought with his 200 yards passing and then under 155 and 4 touchdowns on the ground, that was the first time the kind of green light came on that he was a willing runner. A lot of those were improvisations. And I think going forward, I think he's got to start using those, taking advantage of some of those opportunities. And Alabama has to also get the tailbacks going, because if they do, it makes Alabama a three-headed monster in the running game. And if you look at LSU stats now, Alabama's 14th in the SEC in rushing defense. Hasn't been great. But LSU, even with this defensive improvement, I think it's 11th. So they give up rushing yards on the ground. There'll be opportunities there. LSU's pass defense is worse than Alabama's. So to me, there are plays that are going to be out there. But running the football, Chase, to go back to your point, is the most important thing, because this is not a pass-first football team, in my opinion. That's not how Jalen Milroe is built, and they need to help him out, run the football early, and then hopefully create some opportunities for him throwing the ball.
Yeah, and when you look at as far as the receivers, Ryan Williams was obviously the big target kind of to start the season. People are catching on to that. You mentioned Cole Adams is out now moving forward, but when you look at kind of the identity, the distinction of what makes this offense the way it is, what would you say? Like, if you had to describe Alabama's offense in a sentence, what would it be?
Well, right now, unfortunately, feast or famine, because in the passing game, and it was much like this a year ago, but the big key is last year Alabama was better defensively and could lock some teams down. But with Jalen Milroe, and this has been kind of the issue lately, he has not created a bunch of vertical throws down the field. And then I thought that and again, you want to get the ball to Ryan Williams as much as possible, but I thought it was kind of overkill against Tennessee. Now, he was open a few times where Milroe didn't hit him, and that's a big issue too. Same way against Missouri, same way even against Vanderbilt. He's missed some open guys, including Ryan Williams. But I think the biggest key is they've got to spread the football around, because if they do, Ryan Williams will get his opportunities because he will be open. They need to create balance offensively. Jeremy Bernard has started to really get better, especially in the past 4 or 5 games. He's gotten – and see, that's another thing people need to understand. And that's why this college football playoff is going to be so fascinating, because teams have to get better and improve. Like, so many teams – they're so different from a year ago and now on a year-to-year basis. Ryan Williams was in high school last year. He should still be in high school. He's still, getting comfortable on the college level. Jeremy Bernard is on his 3rd university. I mean, I think I've joked with Chris about this before. 3 years ago, Jeremy Bernard was at Michigan State catching passes from Peyton Thorne. Think about that. Now
that sums up college football in 2024.
Right. And then last year at Washington, he was the 4th guy, and they had 3 pros in front of him, led by Doomsday, Roma Doomsday, who's now with a rookie with the in the NFL. So that's what I'm saying. All those 3 guys ahead of him, kind of, he got his opportunities, but he wasn't a featured part of the offense. Now he's a top 2 guy at Alabama, but he's getting used to playing with a new QB, and so all these guys, these offenses are all works in progress, and Alabama. In all 3 phases, offense, defense, special teams, you couldn't get more different the way they practice, everything. And, of course, that's been scrutinized to the nth degree here in Alabama. But I just think overall this offense, they don't really have an identity yet. I'm hoping, even though it's past the midpoint of the season, that maybe they started finding the secret sauce against Missouri. In other words, you've got to stay patient, you've got to run it, and you've got to make things easier on Jalen Milroe. You've got to get him in a rhythm. And then eventually, hopefully the deep ball will happen. He missed some opportunities with Kobe Prentice in the last game against Mizzou. But again, I think those opportunities will be there, but they have to run the football first and foremost, because again, the strength of the team is the 2 running backs and Jalen Milroe's mobility. And then the receivers have to play off of it. Now, in the future, I think Alabama is going to be more of a pocket team and almost a team that likes to pass to set up the run. But that is not Jalen Milroe's strength as a player.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of been the juggling act Kalen DeBoer and his offensive staff have been kind of trying to play this year.
All right, Drew, we're up against another appointment. So give us a quick prediction and a why on your way out, if you don't mind.
Okay. A lot of people, I've said this for the last several days, and and I've had my co-hosts on BAM's radio. They both picked LSU. I am going with Alabama. I'm going with Kalen DeBoer's track record off bye weeks. He already did a nice job against Georgia. I'm thinking that he's had 2 weeks to script this attack against LSU. Hopefully, Jalen Milroe. Now, he wasn't great in the last game, but he was horrendous against Tennessee, but he was solid. If he doesn't turn the ball over, and see, that was a key. He turned it over against Tennessee. He canceled out some of the turnovers that Alabama created. If Alabama can win the turnover battle by 2-3 against this LSU team, which I think is possible because Nussmeier is prone to turn it over. If Alabama can outrush LSU and win the turnover battle, then I think Jalen Milroe can make a play or two, especially with his legs, to win the game. And I've got Alabama 27-24. I think it'll be another classic in Baton Rouge, but we may have Graham Nicholson make his first memorable kick. Now, he's only 4 of 6 the season, guys. They haven't kicked a lot of field goals, but that's another underlying factor.
Yep.
He made 2 field goals against Missouri, so they've got to have some more confidence in him. But I like the Tide, but in a very, very close one in Red Stick. All
right, Drew, tell folks where they can find your coverage, please.
Yeah, they can find me at DrewD977ESPN on X, at 977ESPN on our station on our X account. And then if you miss any of our content, Scott Tyson and I do bring you Talking Ball. It's 977ESPN.com on our website or on our SoundCloud page, 97.7 The Zone. And we always appreciate it. And congrats again, guys, on Southeastern 16. It's awesome. And I thought about you guys when I was in Tuscaloosa watching as talented a basketball team as I've ever seen at Alabama.
Boy. Well, Drew, appreciate it. I know we'll have you on for basketball season for sure because there's a lot to talk about. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Drew.
For Chase Robinson, I'm Chris Lee. You've been watching Southeastern 16 presented by Bet Online.